And I didn't know. I didn't know. Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Amanda. I am actually going to drive towards downtown today. So I'm actually leaving my apartments right now. But I wanted to talk to you guys on my way in today because I was doing a lot of researching last night for more videos that I want to do. Oh my gosh, sorry, my hair is crazy today, or every day. So I was doing some research on videos, especially I want to do videos more for women drivers because there is a safety risk going out and doing this job when you're out there by yourself. There's also just business risks because you are an independent contractor and you know you want to make sure your base is covered, you know, insurance wise or just legal protection from being sued and stuff like that. And so some of the stuff I've done, like I do have an LLC for the rideshare for additional protection on this job, legal protection that is. But I was looking into the terms of service for Uber and Lyft, and their terms of service, I'm actually going to list those and show those, but the terms of service say you cannot have any weapon of any kind. And I looked at a definition of a weapon is because I've heard of some women having like mace or pepper spray, but even that is classified as a defensive weapon. So thought that was interesting because, you know, what can you do if you're by yourself and someone's attacking you? Yeah, you can call the police, but what can you do in that moment to try and calm a situation down? So I did come across some articles where women said that they brought things with them that they know are against the terms of service, but they felt it was worth it because of the risk of your safety of being out there by yourself. I also looked up on Uber and Lyft's website just to see what they have for safety. And pretty much it's just like a video training, which is what I remember I did with Lyft. This is probably like probably 2 years ago at this point, maybe longer. And it didn't cover all the situations I've been in, but it did cover some big ones as far as, you know, if people are being harassed or things to say and not to say, and just kind of more general stuff, not more of the kind of craziness that I see even here in Portland, let alone the videos I watch on YouTube of drivers in LA and New York and Chicago and the crazy violent things I see on some of those videos. Thank goodness I've never had happen to me, but I have seen some of those videos on YouTube. But while I was researching and reading all this, I started looking up safety, and then it took me to women's rights. And then I started looking up women's rights. And I cannot believe how little legislation there is for women. And the small amount of time that we have had the freedom or privileges that we have as women, to vote, to own things, to open a bank account in our name, for a woman to buy a house, for a woman to make medical decisions for herself. And today, some hospitals, some doctors, they still want your husband, boyfriend, whoever, permission over what you do with your own body. And I mean, going down this track, I can't help but just think about what's going on with Roe v. Wade and women's rights for their body compared to, you know, the loss of life of a baby. And it's just blows my mind. It boggles my mind that women do not have more legislation. We don't have more laws in place in the United States to protect us. You know, so I just went down this huge rabbit hole, and I called my mom and was talking to her about all this stuff of like basically all these laws I was looking up existed. A good chunk of them existed after my brother and I were kids. I mean, some of this stuff went into effect before I went into high school. So we were still kids, but I mean, my mom was pregnant and had babies and lived in this world where you could be discriminated against for having children, for being pregnant, for being a woman, you know. And then you look at the dates of, these are when these amendments or acts were actually passed through Congress. But that doesn't mean that that's the date that it was, you know, implemented in the United States. And when women didn't have as difficult of a time in these certain areas. So I really want to do some videos on this topic because it really just blew my mind. And I couldn't believe the things that I didn't know. One of the things that sits on my mind, because it's kind of the most recent act for women, or it's not even an act, it's a removal of a ban. So in 2013, the removal of the ban for women in combat positions in the military. In 2013. So what are we, 22? So what is that, 7 years ago? That's how long women, it's just like, how, I mean, and who knows, I don't really know what the military is doing either. I don't know how that works now, if a woman can go in any combat position, or if they're few, or if you have to be like the best woman soldier there is in order to get into these jobs. I don't know, but I do think it's a little just insane how recent that is. I mean, and then it's just crazy to me. And there's huge gaps of time where there was no legislation at all. So I definitely want to do some more videos about this, because we really need to understand what things are actually laws and not, and where we stand as women in protecting ourselves. Not just our safety risks out and about, but just letting know like what our legal protections actually are. I feel like so many women don't know these things. And I'm only saying that from experience, because I went through this whole list, which I am going to share, and I didn't know. I didn't know. And I didn't know so many things are not laws. There is no law that protects women from going to prison, or like when it comes to your pro-choice, or basically determining a pregnancy or not. And even with what's going on in Texas, people can just, now they give people this permission to just like sue you. And for me, it's like, I've dealt with infertility for a long time, so I've had many miscarriages, and to know that qualifies in that realm of like an elective abortion type thing is really scary to me, because you have no control over that. Like, when your body miscarries baby, there's nothing you can do. And you know, we as women beat ourselves up about it, but there truly isn't anything you can do. And it's just like these things that get put into laws or acts or amendments or state laws or ordinances or whatever, just are made by people who don't understand these things, I think, or want to punish women, or I don't know. There's so many factors that goes into having a baby, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this. But whenever I talk to my mom, she remembers a time where women like brutalized their own body to not be pregnant, and they would kill themselves or get really sick. And I think for me, that's enough to have a system in place where women can make choices for themselves. So regardless of someone else's religious values or morality or whatever, person is entitled to make decisions for their own body. And you don't always have to do it because of an organization stance or someone else's moral stance. Like, you're the person living your life, and you have to make decisions, and you have to deal with those consequences of all of your decisions. So, oh man, it's like when I started making these videos driving, I really didn't think I would hit a nerve or get into something deep, but I just can't believe living in the United States of America, and there's only a handful of laws for women. Some things are just court cases that went to the Supreme Court, and their ruling in a certain direction is kind of what even keeps a window or a door open to that type of freedom. But it's not a law. And there's certain acts that were passed that just blows my mind that these things didn't always exist. Like, there's the anti-discrimination if you're pregnant. What's called this? The Pregnancy Discrimination Act, something like that. And it's just insane, the things that have to be in law, because if they weren't, we wouldn't have those protections. I mean, what is that called? The Family Medical Leave Act, I believe. Yeah. So that didn't even start until the 90s. And before then, you could, basically you wouldn't have a job. Like, and I think even FMLA is still even hard for the stipulations people have to hit in order for them to give it to you also. So sometimes women just like quit their jobs. But before even that act was in place, and you told you couldn't come to work for 3 months because you had a baby, like, they would just find someone else to replace you. There was no like, I'll be back in a few months. Or when you came back, my mom was telling me this, that when you would come back, you would be in some other crappy position, or they'd pay you less money. Like, there would be some type of negative consequence for the fact that, they had to find someone else, or they'd move you into a different position or something. Basically you kind of lost your job, and you have to like figure out what you're going to do. So when I talk to my mom about all of these things, it's like, wow. I feel like it's just such a different reality than anything I have grown up knowing. And at this point, I don't have any kids, but I just was thinking how much harder and difficult it would be if I lived in the era my mom lived in, or that my grandma lived in. And something else I saw was like the late 60s, I believe. It said in California, they were one of the first states to say that you could get divorced for like a no-fault divorce, or how people say irreconcilable differences. And that was just in California. I don't know how much longer it took other states to have that type of divorce option. But I mean, there's so much stuff you couldn't do. Do not know what's going on with this country sometimes. But I guess just my long-winded way of saying that I want to do a series on this particular subject, because it really just blows my mind how much legislation does not exist for women. And kind of the key one to women's rights, besides the Voting Act that was in 1920, is the Civil Rights Act that was in 1964. And it's like, reminds me of this documentary I watched on Netflix called about I think it was called Feminism, Where Are They Now? And like, there's Jane Fonda and all these really recognizable women, and they were, oh God, what was she making a point about? Gosh, I don't remember now. But anyways, that documentary is so good because it kind of speaks to some of these things. And I mean, even like Jay Fonda, like she lived through a time where, I mean, as a woman, there was so much you couldn't do. I think my mom looked up something about in the 60s, like women could have a bank account in their own name. I'm going to have to look up more of these laws because it sounds so crazy to me that, like, literally, you would have to get your husband, boyfriend, or father's permission to do anything. Or, like, they would have to be on your paperwork. It really isn't until the 60s and 70s, probably even the 80s. Like, I don't know when you could sign a mortgage if you're just a woman by yourself. But there's all this stuff where you need a man to sign off on it. I couldn't imagine that now. I couldn't imagine needing a man to sign off on everything you do. That you're not an individual person. But yeah, so I just want to say I'm going to do a series on this, I think. I really want to do a lot more research and find out more about this because it's just so messed up. And also look, what can we do? Because obviously we need more women in our politics. Representatives, our senators, our local and federal, state, bodies of government. We need more people, more women in everything so that we can get more legislation made, get more protections enacted. There's these things that just are going to take a long time to do. But anyways, I made it to, not quite to downtown. I'm in Portland, but it's, there's lots of traffic. It's 8 in the morning. But I think I made it close enough to turn the app on now. And let's see how well I can do.